Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm your host today, Val Pettigras. And with me, representing the 89th Assembly District, which includes Westchester County, is Assemblyman Bob Castelli. Very good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Today, we're going to go back in time and do a session overview and talk about, some of the things that occurred, because this was a rather historic session. And I know that we keep saying that, but over the years, we're seeing so many different things that are out of the ordinary that we haven't seen in previous legislative sessions.
That's very true, Val. And of course, while we say it's historic, I should let everybody know that the reason it's historic is because we did it all right for a change. And I mean, there's no other way to put it. We got an on-time budget, one of three for the first time in 20 plus years. We did a number of different things which are good when it came to things like a property tax cap, mandate relief, and what have you, which we can speak about later, and worked in a very cooperative fashion, people on both sides of the aisle, along with the governor, to get things done and to stop the ship of state from sinking.
What do you think was the main driving force for such a spirit of cooperation this legislative session?
Well, I would have to give credit to our new governor. Quite honestly, he's one of my constituents, so I'm proud of him. But the reality is he's done a great job. He's led from the front. He's come in there. He's got a businessman's head. He's looked at what it takes to save the state fiscally, and he's enacted the things that were necessary to do. And, I kidded with him when I first got elected. I said, gee, congratulations on winning on my platform, But we both thought alike on this, and when we both gotten along very well in this area.
Well, we've heard the same rhetoric in previous administrations. What do you think made this different?
Well, I think the absolute recognition by all the members in the legislature first, but also with pressure from the public, that the ship of state is sinking. We're broke. We're out of money. We had tremendous budget deficits. We've been robbing from Peter to pay Paul for much too long, and the buck had to stop somewhere, and it's stopped now. As a relatively new person here, as a freshman here, having done 2 sessions now, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle told me last year that in their assessment, after 20 plus years being here, that was one of the worst years they'd ever seen. Well, having used that as a barometer, I will tell you that it was 100% better this year.
And, you started off by saying we finally did things right. So you're alluding to the fact that the budget was on time this year. I believe it was even a little bit early.
Absolutely.
And
as well it should be. It's the way it's supposed to work.
And those cuts were made. How did that happen without a tax increase?
Again, I credit our governor with the kind of leadership necessary to do this and the cooperative attitude by both people on both sides of the aisle. I mean, we had a budget, an enacted budget this year of $131.7 billion. And it's a $3.1 billion decrease, about 2.7% less than last year. Now, it doesn't sound like much on the surface of it, but it's a tremendous change because the trend had been to overspend each year and to continue incrementally to raise that expenditure and thereby raise our debt. So this is a reversal of that trend, and that's a tremendous thing. And one of the ways we did it was by cutting state spending across the board by 10% within all the state agencies. Not an easy cut to make, I might add.
Before we get on with the rest of what happened during legislative session 2011, we are going to look at an introduction on the floor of chamber given by Assemblyman Castelli in regards to Miss Westchester and Miss Teen Westchester and what that means to his area. We'll be back with more Assembly Calendar.
I rise for the purpose of an introduction. Today with us in the chamber, I am pleased and proud to indicate to you and the members that we have 2 of Westchester's best, most beautiful, and finest young women. We have Miss Westchester and Miss Teen Westchester. Miss Westchester, Christina DeLeon, is with us. She represents Yorktown Heights and represents all that is beautiful, gracious, and intelligent in Westchester. Accompanying her are Miss Westchester Teen, Samantha Gold, who also represents what is best of us in Westchester. She is from Armonk, New York. Accompanying these young ladies, we have Samantha's mother, Danielle Gold, and Peter and Laura Giannoni, who represent the Miss Westchester pageant. They have revived the Miss Westchester pageant, and the beauty of the product, I think, is there for all of you to behold. So on behalf of all the members of the Westchester delegation, Mr. Katz, Ms. Paulin, Ms. Galiff, Mr. Spano, Mr. Latimer, yourself, Mr. Speaker, and of course myself, I would ask that you present them a warm welcome and all the cordialities of the House.
On behalf of Mr. Castelli, Mrs. Katz, the Speaker, the members of the Westchester delegation, and all the members of this chamber, I welcome these fine individuals from Westchester County to our chamber, offer you the cordialities and the privileges of the House, and enjoy your day in Albany. Thank you.
Now tell me what something, an introduction like this, what does this mean to your neck of the woods?
Well, first of all, I mean, we always want to showcase the talent of our youth. And in this community, we have both beautiful and talented girls in the Miss Westchester pageant. Now, the Miss Westchester pageant has had a new breath of life breathing with thanks to Dee Van Eck and Laura Giannone, the two ladies who are the driving force behind that. But most importantly, and right now, as a result of having breathed life back into this, we've now just this past week been informed that the Trump Organization and K2 Productions is bringing the Miss New York State pageant to my district, which will generate for us at least $3 million in revenue just as a result of the pageant. So when we're looking to increase economic development, which is one of the things we started to do this year, recognize we want to be the Empire State once again, doing what we can to get businesses to come back to Westchester especially is important.
And that's a whole nother show, because economic growth and job creation is very important and vital to any economy, obviously, but we're seeing people leave New York State for a wide variety of reasons because they can't get jobs, the property taxes are too high, the cost of living here is just too high. And with all that said, let's focus on the property taxes, because that's something that was a success for the Assembly minority this year, as well as the governor, to cap those property tax, or yes, to instill a property tax cap.
Surely. Well, we've been fighting for this, as you know, for many, many years. I had my own separate property tax cap bill in, and the governor came out with a program bill for a property tax cap. We were thrilled about this. We supported him on our side of the aisle as well as the other side of the aisle, and recognized that if we're going to keep our spending in check, we needed to have a property tax cap to give some relief. And what this property tax cap does basically is it limits the property tax increases to 2% per year, or the CPI, whichever is less, the Consumer Price Index. And now, well, many people have looked at this and said, well, okay, this is going to be an onerous thing to our municipalities, to our school districts, but there is a fail-safe mechanism in here, and people need to recognize that. With that fail-safe mechanism in place, a two-thirds vote of a town board, for instance, with 5 people on it, typically in this area that I represent, or 60%, a supermajority of the voters voting on a school board budget, can override the cap if we find out that there is some criticality that requires them to exceed that cap because of a critical need in that particular calendar year. So it's not like they're going to be hammered into the ground. There is a mechanism to get around it, but only if there is an exigent circumstance, and it's going to require a supermajority of the votes. So it's kind of holding both the school districts and public officials' feet to the fire to make sure that there is no overspending.
We've talked about mandate relief, especially in regards to the property tax cap. Do you think it goes far enough?
Absolutely not. One of the things I've been critical about, and I mentioned to the governor, was that in order for the property tax cap to work the way we wanted to, we needed to have some legitimate short-term mandate relief. Now, the governor and the legislature working together came up with about $127 million in mandate relief statewide. I would submit to you that that is a tenth of what it needed to be. In order to do this the way we need to do, we need to have mandate relief that's incorporated in 2 things. Both labor reform, which will be long-term mandate relief, for instance, the institution of a Tier 6 system that we're looking at as we speak, and the institution of short-term mandate relief, which we do not have in this area, for instance, Wick's Law reform, the repeal of the Triborough Amendment, and what have you. But we got as much as we could get done in that short period of time to create that omnibus bill.
And it should be mentioned because maybe there are people out there who are not certain what a mandate is, and that's when the state passes on or tells the county, you're going to do this, and we don't know how you're going to pay for it, but
and you got to pay for it.
Right, exactly. And I always liken it to inviting someone out to dinner, telling them what they're going to order, and sticking them with the tab.
That's an excellent analogy because it's something that has happened and was always a pet peeve of mine.
You know, it's great for us to sit up in here on Albany and say, well, look, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that, and what have you. But, you know, good ideas are good ideas. And by the way, they're not Republican or Democrat good ideas, they're just good ideas. And all of us would like to get on board with those when they're the right thing to do. But to create unfunded mandates, which the state has been notorious for doing, has created the tax burden that we in Westchester have that has made us the highest tax county in the United States of America. And it has to stop. If we're going to turn around and put a mandate on one of our local towns, the city of White Plains, Bedford, we need to give them the funding to enact that mandate.
I want you to say that one more time, because you said in the nation.
In the nation, yeah. We have the highest property tax
yep.
in the nation. You know, I use this analogy many times with my colleagues across the state here. If you were to look at, and most people can relate to this, a 3-bedroom raised ranch on 2 level acres, 2,500 square foot house to 3,000 maximum, okay? That house upstate might typically be anywhere between $300,000 to $400,000 or $500,000. With taxes, they may range anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, $6,000. Well, in towns like ours, that's a $950,000 house with $22,000 to $26,000 a year in taxes.
What accounts for that?
Well, the largest majority of that, you know, of every $100 of a taxpayer's tax bill, $70+ of that goes to the school budget. And of course, in one regard, the legislature kind of gets a bad rap for something that they didn't do. We do a lot wrong, but it wasn't that one.
But that one's not us.
No, but well, I mean, the reality is this. The school budget is put forth as a separately formed budget by a separately elected school board, which is voted by the public in the individual communities. And the budget is then voted by the public in that particular community. So while the state has no say whatsoever over the size of that budget, whether it gets voted in or voted out, what we do is take on the burden of that, because if they increase that budget, when it comes to things like pension increases, we now have to come up with the money to pay the union employees who are under the state pension system.
We have a little bit of time left, and in that time I'd like to mention that as property taxes and the cap on those were important to your side of the aisle, on the majority side, rent control was a big issue.
Absolutely, and believe it or not, because I have such a diverse district, it was an important thing to me. Even though I have probably the wealthiest district in the state, the fact of the matter is, in the city of White Plains and in Mount Kisco alone, I have over 4,700 rent control apartments and 38 separate rent control buildings. So rent control became a big issue, to keep the rent control stabilized for the individuals in the lower and the middle class so they can afford to continue to live in the places they live. It was done, it benefits my district, and it was a good thing, I think, all around. Obviously, most people saw it as relative to New York City primarily, but there are residual benefits in all of the cities throughout the state and all of the urban areas.
And it's been such a different climate this year with both sides of the aisle achieving their respective goals, which you don't often see.
No, and it has. And you know how that happens? What happens is you decide to play nice in the sandbox of government. And everyone decided to play nice here. Perhaps Congress should take a lesson from this one.
I know. Can you imagine, like, for once, on the federal level, they should be looking at New York State as to how to do that? And unfortunately, we are out of time, so we can't explore that thought any further. But we do have time to let you out there know how to reach your representative. Please contact Bob Castelli at 4 New King Street, Suite 125, White Plains 10604, or give him a call at 914-686-7335. And of course, there's Assemblyman Castelli's email address at the bottom of the screen, should you choose to contact him that way. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I look forward to many more conversations.
Thank you, Bill. It's an honor to be here.
We hope that you join us for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.